Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall hardship or persecution, nakedness, danger, or sword? No, in all of these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither angels nor demons, the present or the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Welcome today as we come to this. These things are always difficult. And as we come to remember and honor Sherry today, I want to invite you to be remembering and thinking. There'll be an opportunity in the service if you want to share a little memory, a short memory. If you have a 25-minute memory, tell that around the table. But there'll be that opportunity, because we want you to do that. We want you to have an opportunity to share. But and probably the most important thing we're doing today is in the idea of remembering. And so I do want to invite you to let your mind wander if you need to. Go back over your relationship with Sherry and your remembering years and memories and see what comes to the surface today. And that's what you want to share if you can. And if you don't do it during the service, come up to one of the family afterwards, share your memory. Because her life now is like a book that's been written from cover to cover. And what's written on the pages of that book are the things you remember. So you want to help each other remember as much as you can. You want to help each other fill in the pages. Because when you've remembered as much as you can, and you've shared as much as you can, and you've helped each other remember, that book of her life is a gift. All life is a gift. All life is a gift exchange where we give each other the gift of life and the gift of love. And her life, the gift of her life, has now been totally given. It is completely yours. And so you want to share those things. You want to fill in those pages. You want to share those things. They're so important that you do that. Because when you do that and you share a lot of different things, believe it or not, we're all here to remember Sherry. I knew her. All of you knew her. But each of you knew her in the window of your life. It's like a diamond that's been cut and has all the different facets to reflect the light. Your view of her life is just one facet. Her life is the diamond, it's all of it. But your view is just one. And so to get a complete picture of her, you want to share those memories. I can remember going down in the mall years and years ago, and you'd usually find some guy sitting in the window display, and he would be painting. He would have a little tiny photograph, and he would be painting a portrait of the person in the photograph. And I can remember watching that. I'm not an artist in any way, shape, or form, so it was always fascinating. But I want to tell you what you're doing. As great as these pictures are up here, as great as the pictures were that we saw on the screen, and we'll replay that when it's over, the greatest picture of her is the one you have in your mind. And every memory you share is another brushstroke on that portrait. So help each other today. Help each other remember. It is so important that you be able to do that. Because it not only helps you remember, and you help each other remember, and remembering is one of those things that God uses to heal us. Memories is how he uses to heal us. And so we remember things, and God uses that in the healing process. And it becomes this wonderful thing where the very thing you do to help each other today, to help yourself, and to help each other remember and to heal is the very thing that God uses to help you. It doesn't take much reading, particularly in the New Testament, to see the word remember. We have these beautiful flowers up here. And on Sunday, that's where our communion is. And you know what communion is all about? Whenever you do this, remember. See, remembering is one of those things that God uses to heal your heart. So today, that's what's happening. That's what's taking place. It helps you feel better. It helps others feel better. And it's what God uses. Now, when you look at Sherry's life, it is no different than looking at my life or looking at your life. And by that I mean this. I've known absolutely no one whose life was absolutely perfect. And they were absolutely perfect. Well, except for my wife. Everybody has issues. Everybody goes through hard times. Everybody has wonderful parts of their personality. Everybody has difficult parts of their personality. And as you remember her, the freedom that you have, and the key here is this. There's a little verse in the New Testament. I loved it because it was the easiest thing to memorize. It says, test everything, hold on to that which is good. And that's what you get to do today. You're going to remember everything. But you get to choose. You get to choose to hold on to the good stuff. You get to choose to hold on to those things that were positive. You get to choose to hold on to those things that were encouraging. And when you do that, it leads you to the second thing. The first thing you're doing is remembering. The second thing we're all here to do, and I think we would agree with this, we're here to honor. We're here to honor her. Isn't that right? Well, the question is, what in the world does that mean? How do you honor someone? What is honor? English, it's like a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb. It fills all the boxes. How do you describe it? What do you do? How do you honor someone? I remember many years ago, had a 12-year-old come to me at the end of the service. And you know how 12-year-olds are. Everybody's walking out the door, greeting the pastor and everything. This 12-year-old walks up and goes, "Pastor." "Yes." "I can put the whole Bible in a sentence." That's how he said it. We all went, okay. What he said was this: we take the love that God gives to us in Jesus Christ, and we give it to each other. After I picked my jaw up off the floor, I said, you absolutely nailed the whole New Testament in one line, but you also nailed the concept of honor. We honor Christ by striving to be like him, by loving as he loved, forgiving as he forgave. We strive to honor God by being holy. He tells us to be holy. That doesn't mean be super special and perfect. It just means be different, the way God is different. And so you honor her today, not just by being here, not just by remembering. You honor her by sifting through everything you remember. And as you sift through all of these memories, and you sift it through this grid of finding the good, you find those gems. You find those good things. And you not only remember them, you make them part of who you are. Just like we honor God, same way we honor each other. We take the best and we make it part of the best of us. So remember today, share those memories. It is so important and so healing. There is really nothing else you can do. That's the greatest way you can do it. So I want to encourage you to do that. Because this is time for family and friends to come together. This is the time we gather around and we love each other, and we let the love of God flow through us to each other, and the Spirit of God flow through us to each other, to heal, and to encourage. Now, we've talked about remembering and how that leads to honoring. And he's leaving. No. And the next thing is, guess what? I'm going to have Mitch come up and share. He may have company with him. You're first.
I volunteer as tribute. All right. Very good. Should probably grab the jacket. But. All right. First of all, it's good to see all of you. It's good to see so many crying faces. Thank you. No, sorry, that's wrong. Well, anyway, thank you all for coming. Initially, we had talked about, I had thought about doing thank yous, and then I realized as everybody piled in that we'll be here for an hour, at least doing that. So I will continue to say that individually to everybody. So thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody who has been a part of my mom's journey. Those of you that worked with her, you made it bearable, and I hear that she did the same, so that's good. And just for family who has been there through all of this, doing more than I could ever have asked and would have asked, has been amazing. My sister was the rock for my mom for all those years, not in terms of muscle, right, like the wrestler, but, well, that too, but just always there. Again, there's too many thank yous. Thank you to my wife, Nicole, her husband, I was going to say my husband, Jeff, but we're not going to talk about that today. Anyway, just for being so supportive. So thank you to everybody. I heard from Sue Haynes that, can you guys hear me okay? It's good? Okay. I heard from Sue that when she retired, it was last minute. Nobody got to throw her a goodbye party, and I know that at the end of her life, a lot of you did not, virtually all of you did not get to say goodbye. We call that the Irish exit, and genetics run deep, so I'm really sorry about that. It was not a reflection of how much she cared about all of you. Even the grandkids didn't get to say goodbye. She had her struggles, and it was really hard for her at the end to be able to go. If she had seen too many people and she worried about looking a certain way, and it was just my mom's struggles. It was not a reflection of how much she loved all of you, because she did. She would be thrilled to see all of you today. So again, thank you for coming. All right, that being said, I think instead of talking about my mom today, we'll talk about my dad instead. Okay, I thought that'd make her mad enough to come back and haunt us if ghosts are real, and then you could say goodbye. But apparently ghosts are not real, Santa still is, guys. So, all right. We used to watch the late night shows together when I was growing up. I wasn't allowed to see Titanic, but, you know, I could watch The Naked Gun, so I guess it just depends on what kind of naked you're going for. But anyway, I figured I'd do like a top 10 kind of a thing for her. The top 10 ways in which my mom contributed to the man I am today, in mostly good ways. First of all, she made sure I was prepared for the world when it came to academics and also courting the ladies. She had me reading and writing before I was in kindergarten, and I didn't realize till I got older that that's a very unique thing. Most parents don't put in that much effort, and I think that's when she started losing hair. Sorry. But anyway, I got to kindergarten. I wrote a love note to this girl, Julie, that I had a crush on. I gave it to her. She looked at it, smiled, handed it back to me, walked out the door. And that's where my abandonment issues started, of which all my therapists have been very thankful that I was able to help them make a car payment. But anyway, all this to say, I couldn't have written that note. I wouldn't have done nearly as well as I did in college and everything else over the years without all of the ways in which she just constantly, I mean, we had an assignment. It was like, no, you're going to do another assignment that I've made up. I hated it at the time. But as I got older, I realized I'm not as dumb as I think that I am. And thanks, Mom, for that. So that was helpful. My mom taught us to, be assertive and stand up for ourselves. I remember being, again, in kindergarten, thinking I was in trouble one day. The teacher held me over And it was Miss Rossler. I don't know if any of you had worked with her. Yeah, you remember Miss Rossler. Yeah, Mrs. Lippis knows. Yeah, and just the sweetest, kindest old lady. I'm thinking I'm going to get in trouble. My mom walks in. She goes, "Sherry, Mitchell today, somebody tried to take his toy, and he said, 'Homie, don't think so.' I'm just wondering where he might have heard that." My mom started laughing. I knew everything was okay. But as you know, with my mom, very assertive. And for someone who's not naturally assertive, that came through handy at times over the years. My mom also taught us a love of nature. I didn't get a Nintendo till, I don't know, late high school. And so it was like, why would, the TV? No, God gave you nature's TV. Go outside, play with friends, play sports, go hug a tree. Even though my mom's idea of camping was a picture of a tree next to her bed, playing outside was the gateway to all the camping that my dad took us on. So I always appreciated that, my love of sports, my love of nature, my imagination. When you're bored outside, what else are you going to do? So that was all very helpful. My mom taught us to do what you have to do for your family and for your kids, even when you'd rather not. My mom preferred root canals to driving. I don't know why, but she absolutely hated it. And I was sick all the time as a kid. I was in the doctor's office once or twice a month. I had 7 surgeries by the time I was a teenager. My mom was always driving us, always there. There was no visiting hours at the surgery thing. I think she was looking over the surgeon's shoulder the whole time. I should probably write them an apology. But she was always there, and she would rather not be. She had been through cancer before being pregnant with me. Hospitals had to be very difficult for her, and she was there. She showed up, and I always appreciated that. Does he want to come up here? Because I'm totally good with that. Oh, he's going to play with toys, yeah. Look, we all want to play with toys right now, bud. And on that note, one of the biggest things in my life, my mom taught us a love of music. When we got in the car, it was you do not talk unless the car is on fire or somehow you got more sick and are dying. I don't want to hear your voice. We got in the car, you heard the click of the seatbelt, and the stereo turned up. And we had an eclectic mix of music. Other than polka and metal, we heard it all. And to this day, I'm still not a polka fan. But my love of music, in my mind, I was in so many bands of all these different styles before I ever got in a band, and that was thanks to my mom. We always heard music, and so that was incredible, and it's shaped who I am today. She was definitely our number one fan. I watch a lot of sports. You hear about the number one fans. No, my mom did not have the tattoos that I know of. And she didn't tend to go out for hats, but my mom showed up to everything that we did. Thank God I had a sister who was on a different seasonal schedule in terms of sports, because if it had been 2 brothers in 2 different sports, the district would have had to change its schedule. And so she was always there every single time. I remember one time, MapQuest, when you had to print it out back in the day, had given her the wrong directions up in Palmdale there. She ended out in the middle of a field somewhere, which was the most camping she'd ever done. And she shows up late. Yeah, I think you maybe were with her. Yeah, okay, yeah. It's a legend in our family. She shows up late, and there were words flying and all of that stuff. There's kids here. But I'm pretty sure that's why MapQuest no longer exists. Her vengeance was slow, but it was steady. And she still showed up. She still made it. So I always appreciated that. That's why I try to show up, for my kid. Gosh, I'm going to be hanging on that kid. But we learned that from my mom. My mom taught us work ethic. I know a lot of it was her anxiety that drove her, but my mom was just constantly moving, constantly going. It doesn't matter whether you feel like it, you show up. Over the years at work, I always got applauded for my work ethic. I am not naturally a hardworking person. I consider myself to be pretty lazy. I like a nice flow of things. That's not what shows up, because my mom taught us, you show up, you put everything in, and then you get to rest. And even though I've learned a healthier balance of that over the years, it was really helpful, because I don't know where I'd be without her constant voice in my ear going, if you don't show up, you're going to end up under the bridge with nobody to love you. It's constant in my mind, and it was a good thing. The fear drove me, and that was a good thing. Wrapping up the last few, my mom taught us humility. One of her favorite phrases was, "Who died and made you king?" Enough said. My mom also taught me Catholic guilt before I was Catholic. We'll also leave that one there. My mom taught me pain tolerance. And as odd as that might sound, that has come in really handy for me over the years. I used to get really bad headaches as a kid, but my mom had really bad migraines. Speaking of work ethic, you guys know she showed up to school with migraines, and I don't know how she did it. She'd show up and do stuff for us at home, cook dinner and everything else with a bandana around her head with bottle caps on her temples. I think she would have preferred a lobotomy to migraines. It still wouldn't have taken out her personality, I guarantee you that. And she always showed up, and again, she taught us a lot about pain tolerance. I could have the worst headache in the world. It looked like I was rocking, but that's how much my head hurt. And she would say, okay, Tylenol's the best I can do. It was like one of those pawn shop shows. Like, I got this guitar, 500's the best I can do. Tylenol's the best I can do. It's like, this is worth at least $5,000. This is at least worth a Percocet. Nope, Tylenol. And it honestly helped as I got older, because again, I learned not to complain. I learned to just show up, and I really appreciate that more than I can say. The final thing, well, I'll try not to let this one get me. My mom, seeing her in the last few years of her life, well, more than that, the last 10, 11, being a grandma meant the world to her. All of you that worked with her know she loved the age of 0 to 2. After that, yeah, there's a lot of nodding. I felt there's a wind turbine turned on in here. It was kind of warm, so I appreciate that. After 2, depending on how you acted, but she loved that 0 to 2 age, and I got to see the greatest joy was seeing her with the grandkids, and I got to see her with my son, and I am really thankful for that. And it showed me the kind of dad that I want to be and the kind of grandparent that I want to be. And that was great to see. When James was born, we thought we had 3 weeks to go, doesn't everybody? And so we had gone to the beach the day before. It's like, this is our last trip up to Carpinteria, which ended up being her last time going to Carpinteria, which she loves so much. So the timing was perfect in the end, right? But you don't see it at the time. The next morning, 5 a.m, Nicole goes into labor. And we had nothing ready. There were no, and give me a load for that. It's fine. I deserve it. But I had nothing ready. I had the to-do list for that weekend, but nothing was ready. Nothing was installed. Nothing was washed. We had all hand-me-down stuff. It needed to be washed. It was all hands on deck, and my sister came down from her best friend's party, and Jeff came down, my mom came down, and I found out later my mom had like broken rib, a fractured spine. She was sitting wrong in the seat. She made the drive all the way from Santa Clarita out to Long Beach Memorial, where we were at, and I didn't hear anything about it till I saw her struggling to get in the car. They had gone to the house to get everything ready. And again, you talk about showing up for your family for what they need. I can't top that. I can only try to match that. So I would not be who I am today, the man I am today, without the mom I had when I was growing up. A few days after I was 21, wrapping up here, I woke up, I think it was 2 days after I was 21, I woke up, I sat straight up in bed, and I was like, I think my mom, I think my parents did the best they knew how to do. I walked into her room, and I was like, Mom, She was just getting up too. I was like, Mom, I just want to say, I think you did the best that you knew how to do, and I really appreciate it. My baby. Sorry that I said anything. But there's a quote from Maya Angelou that I had on my office door in Long Beach the whole time I was there. She said that I did the best I knew how to do. When I knew better, I did better. And I think for all my mom's struggles, she did the best that she knew how to do. And I am so thankful for that. I had a mom who showed up and did her best, and I see that reflected in my life. And I appreciate that more than I can say. Through all 6 battles with cancer, 6 times, man, she showed a strength that most people never have to show. And now she goes to a far, far better rest than anything that she has ever known.
Now's your time for you to show up, okay? Now's the time.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
Writing the speech was difficult for a variety of reasons. For everyone who knows me and my mom, we weren't exactly slated to get matching tattoos anytime soon. So it's hard for me to stand up here and ignore that, but at the same time, just because we didn't get along every second of every day didn't mean she was a bad person. So let's get that out of the way now. I think we were far too similar in some ways and far too different in other ways to completely mesh like the Gilmore Girls. I did fight for that type of relationship for a long time before my therapist told me that you need to accept your mom for the person she is and not try to change her into the person you want her to be, because it will never happen. And like all well-trained and well-paid therapists, she was right. No amount of arguing would fundamentally change my mom as a person, just like she couldn't mold me into the daughter she wanted. From the time I hit puberty until about 10 years ago, every time my mother said something I disagreed with, I would push back. And because we were both stubborn beyond all belief, we would scream at each other for hours. We fought far more than we got along during that time period. Moving out did help a little. Even 3 miles of absence made the heart grow somewhat fonder. We still had arguments, and she did disown me for a hot minute, but I eventually learned to stop arguing with her. I realized I didn't have to agree with her, but arguing with her never got me anywhere or gave me anything but more face-to-face time with my therapist. I actually had to bite my cheek more times than I could count, and I definitely hung up the phone with her many times, absolutely filled with enough rage to take on Hell's Angels, armed solely with a toothpick. But what's crazy is that once I gaslit myself into believing that we could get along, we actually started to get along. We shared genuine laughs and moments together that we would recall for years. I started to want to answer her phone calls, and I called her when I needed a sounding board. She turned out to be the best grandma and helped me so much when my son was a baby. I could text her or call her with a "Mom, I need help," and she would be over in minutes, ripping my kid out of my arms, shoving me into bed so I could catch up on much-needed sleep, and taking him into the other room, cooing the entire way down the hall. She was a creature of habit and ritual, so last-minute surprises and changes weren't her jam. But when it was necessary, my mom was there for me. Even in our darkest, most combative moments, I could never claim that my mom was a neglectful parent. She always had home-cooked meals on the dinner table every night. She showed up to every choir performance and tennis match, every ballet and tap show. And when other kids looked for their parents in the crowd with crestfallen faces, I never had to look for my mom because I knew she would always be there. She could be bleeding from both eyes and ears, and she would still make it to my games, shows, and recitals. I remember one time when we were driving to Palmdale to see my brother play in one of his high school tennis games. It was back when we had to print out MapQuest directions, and of course, that shoddy mapping system led us down a dirt road, absolutely nowhere near civilization, much less a high school. Yet somehow a pack of stray dogs appeared out of thin air and started chasing down our car, and despite all of that, we braved the dogs and the desert and miraculously made it to see my brother. She was not going to miss a game. So my mom loved us, without a doubt. Mitchell was always her favorite. But I know that my mom did love me. And the one time I actually remember her telling me she was proud of me and her actions matching her words was when I did my first book signing at Barnes & Noble. This looks long, but I made it really big, I promise. She and my brother were actually chasing people down in the romance section and half dragging them to my book table, promising my book was the one they actually wanted to read. I will always remember us on that day. My friend took a photo of us, and my mom had her arms wrapped around me with a look of true pride on her face, and I'll never forget that. And while I've spent many years in therapy trying to rebound from the less than positive things my mom did or said to me growing up, I learned many invaluable things from her. She showed me how to be a strong, independent woman, though reluctantly at times. I was still begging her to call my doctors and make appointments for me until pretty much the very end. I absolutely hate making phone calls. She taught me not to take crap from anyone and fight for what I believe in, even if my beliefs differed from her own. Again, these lessons probably also led to our years of fighting, but the silver lining was to learn to be a badass in certain situations. Tina Turner and my mom both instilled in me that women are powerful and men should tread lightly if they're smart enough. And you know what? I have yet to find the lie in that. She also taught me that I could always do better, which is both a blessing and a curse for obvious reasons. She showed me that strength comes in many forms. She told me to rely on myself more than others because unfortunately people will let you down more often than not. And even though we spent all those years butting heads, I can confidently say that my mom did her best. She tried to parent the way her parents didn't. Of course, I didn't comprehend that when I was young, but now as a parent and an adult, I know caring parents can only do their best. And their best will never be perfect. No one is ever perfect, and I wish I came to that realization decades ago, but I am thankful for the years I did have with my mom when we did get along. She would come to my doctor's appointments, and I would take her to hers. She would come to my infusions, and I went to hers. She would edit every line of every book I wrote, even if it meant reading it for the 60th time and catching mistakes like shirt holes instead of sleeves. And yes, I am a published author, and yes, I did use shirt holes in place of sleeves because I couldn't think of the word. We both lived thunderstorms, so every time we heard a clap of thunder, we were on the phone with each other within seconds. And I mean, any time we heard thunder, we were on the phone. 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., if there was a noise in the sky with any probability that it was thunder, it was a race to see who could call who first. In fact, we called each other at the exact same time multiple times over the years, resulting in busy signals and us trying again until the calls went through. As a former employee of a local school district, she would empathize with me when I had a rough day substitute teaching. She knew my schedule and would text me in the morning before school started, wishing me good luck and a well-behaved class. She would pick up my calls 2 hours later while I was on recess, either rocking in a corner or ranting about the audacity some kids have these days. She would text me on my lunch, and once I clocked out, make sure everyone was still alive and I wasn't in jail from losing my mind. She became one of the first people I always called when I needed to talk because I knew she would answer and talk me down or offer to go to jail alongside of me, whichever seemed like the best move at the time. Good news or bad news, I would always call my mom first. And now that she's gone, the realization that no one can fill the void is still something I can't fully process. My first substitute teaching job after she passed, I went to call her once the bell rang for recess, only to stop in my tracks due to a shocking thought. I couldn't call my mom. I can never call my mom. I can't see her when I want to. I can't waltz into the bathroom at her house anymore unannounced, because what are boundaries? We can't share thunderstorms anymore. If I bring up shirt holes to anyone else, they think I'm absolutely insane. No one will text me to see how I'm doing at work as consistently as she did. She won't be at my kids' shows, award ceremonies, and sports games like she was with me and my brother. She is going to miss so much, but it's nothing compared to how much I will miss her. And while her passing doesn't seem fair and has definitely not been easy, I know she's not suffering anymore, as cliche as it sounds. After 40 years of dealing with various cancers, that horrible disease can't take anything else from her anymore. It took so much life away from her and ultimately everyone who loved her, but she went out how she wanted to go, and there is something marginally comforting in knowing that. She wasn't alone in her last moments. She wasn't stuck in a hospital bed. She was surrounded by her children and sisters who loved her unconditionally in her own home, and I know that made things easier for her. And I selfishly wish there was something to make this all easier for me and everyone else who is mourning the loss of my mom. Preferably something that's legal, but I have yet to find out what that could be. So until a magical fix for unyielding sadness and the gaping feeling of loss is invented, I will sit in the company of those left here on earth without my mom and try to learn how to live without her. Maybe someday I'll be able to listen to Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run and Tina Turner's You Better Be Good to Me without crying so hard I want to throw up. But today isn't that day, and I'm fairly certain it won't show up anytime soon. And thank you to everyone who was here this morning to remember my mom. I know for a fact each and every one of you who was here meant a lot to her, so your presence means a lot to me too.
Good job, you two. That was good. Anybody else have anything short they want to share here before we go on? Yes.
It's kind of short. Well, we're here to celebrate Sherry's life and what many memories we have of her. I first met Sherry at Bouquet Canyon, a school that was just opening up. I was a custodian there. I think it was around '89. I can't remember. We needed yard duties desperately, and office managers and all kinds of people. Well, Sherry was one of the yard duties who were there. There was Lori Stonerock, Lori Trepp, Joanne Hawkins, Angela Walters, Kim Vesper. Those are the main ladies, the main core, because the kids were brutal that year. That was our first year, and they were brutal. But they, being a yard duty wasn't easy, but it worked for everybody because the kids were still, their kids were still small. I mean, you didn't have to work the summers, you didn't have to work the weekends, holidays are off, so it all worked for everybody. And through the years, we all became good friends. We celebrated our birthdays, our accomplishments. We went out to dinners. It was just a good time, and we bounced ideas off of each other's kids. So was doing what, but we got along. And one of my jobs there at the school was putting up tetherballs. You got everybody was putting tetherballs. Chain. I couldn't reach, and I hated it. I had to climb the pole. Well, here comes Sherry, and I said, "Oh God, thank you. No more climbing poles." And we became friends after that. And I said to myself, this is a good group. It was a good place to work in the neighborhood. Everybody knew everybody. The kids were great. I mean, we just grew up. You hear about these small towns that you have this, but it was true neighborhood. To this day, everybody's still in the neighborhood. And it was just a good place, and we all became friends. Sherry had a good sense of humor. I know where Carissa gets it. She was smart. She was intelligent. She was compassionate. And she loved animals. She loved her cats and her tortoises. And if there was a stray in the neighborhood, we knew where to go. We'd call Sherry up, and Sherry to the rescue, and she'd take care of it. She was the kind of neighbor you wanted to have. If you were going on vacation, she'd pick up your mail, water your plants, feed the dogs, anything for the neighborhood. And, nobody does that, and she was just great that way. She was always there. Sherry went through a lot in her life, but she persevered. They say that if you can count your friends on one hand, you're lucky, and I'm glad that she's on that hand. I will always remember Sherry. We were avid Survivor fans, and this coming week is going to be the 50th, and I will be watching for her because she just loved that. We'd always call each other back and forth, see what's going on. And through the years, we stayed in contact, and just, we were just good friends. And she really loved you, Carissa and Mitchell, but the greatest gift that you guys could have gave her was her grandkids. She just loved those kids to no end. She was very, very proud of you guys. And I leave you with this, Timothy 2, verse 4, chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. Till we meet again, Sherry.
Very good. Anyone else before we go on? Yes, come on up.
I remember Meme I've known her for my entire life. And just seeing her gone, it's hard. I know she's in a better place, and it's very hard to move on. If I needed comfort, she would be there for me. If I was scared, she would comfort me. At my award ceremonies, she would celebrate with me, and it's really hard to just accept that she's gone. I hope she lives a good life in heaven, and I hope to see her one day.
Oh, that was awesome. In the story of Scriptures, Jesus had a close friend named Lazarus. And Jesus and his disciples had fled Judea because they were wanting to kill him, and it wasn't time. So they were 80 miles away along the river. And his friend Lazarus became sick. And they sent word to Jesus saying, hey, your friend Lazarus is sick. And he said, well, okay, we'll get there. Didn't respond. And then they received word a few days later that Lazarus had passed away. And then Jesus says, let's go. So they walked the 80 miles, and they're approaching into the village where Lazarus lived with his sisters. And one of the sisters sees them, and she comes running out down the road, comes up to Jesus, just like, someone who's hurting and grieving is. She comes up to Jesus, and I think she was like this. Jesus, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. And he says, well, your brother will rise again. And Jesus turned and said, she says, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection of the last day. And then Jesus looks at her and says, look at me. I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? And then see what happened there was a number of different things. Number one, she was hurting. And she knew without any doubt that if Jesus had been there, man, say a prayer, he's up, he's gone, he's ready, But Jesus didn't come. Jesus didn't come. And sometimes we go through hard times and we go through difficult times, and it's like, where's the Lord? Where's the Lord? Well, he's waiting for the opportune time. He's waiting because sometimes the very things, testimony of these kids, the very things that made life hard made them better. And so sometimes Jesus doesn't just show up because he's using this in a process to make you better. And he confronts her in that, but he confronts her about, hey, you're talking about resurrection. I am the resurrection of life. This is what you have to believe. But there's something else in that sentence. She says, if only. And I can't tell you how many times we look over our lives and we look over the things that happen and rehearse someone's life. And you say, well, if only that could have been, if only it could have been this way, if only this could have been this way. We all have if onlys. And the only way through the if onlys is to look at Jesus. Jesus walked up to the house. As he gets up to the house, the other sister sees Jesus, comes running out to him. Guess what she says? If you had only been here, my brother would not have died. And he starts it all over again. See, they didn't know he had a higher purpose. They didn't know he had a higher plan. That's the way it is in this life. We don't know what God's plan is. We know his plan is for us to be saved in him and to grow in him and to be like him. Everything else is a day-by-day experience of what's going to happen now. He said, show me where they put him. And they walked him to a hillside where they had dug out a tomb and rolled a stone in front of it. And he's, the whole crowd like this walks out to the tomb and everybody's crying, and Jesus looks at their pain. He looks at their pain, and it says Jesus wept. He cried with them. He knew what he was going to do, but he cried with them. He feels our pain. no matter what that pain is, no matter how much we hurt, no matter how debilitating it is. He feels that pain. The surprising thing that he did was after he cried and looked at everybody, he says, move the stone. And the sister says, wait a minute, it's been 4 days. It's not going to smell good. Move the stone. They move the stone, and he just says, Lazarus, come on out. Lazarus is wrapped in the grave clothes, as they did in those days, and he sort of hops out, and he says, take that off of him. He knew he was going to bring him back. That was his plan. Nobody else knew that. Nobody else knew what God was doing until he does it. See, and that's the idea. We all have if-onlys. But whenever we confront Jesus with an if-only, Jesus, hey, look at me. Look at me. We get through this. We get through this. He always has a plan. You know, there used to be a little gospel tract back in the 60s that says, God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. What they didn't tell you is that's locked away in a filing cabinet somewhere in some big, warehouse in heaven, and we never get to know what the plan is. We get to discover it every day as we choose how we live, as we choose how we remember, as we choose how we honor, as we remember the loved ones that were part of our lives, as we are the loved ones to others. See? When Jesus was approaching his own death, the night before he was to be killed, his apostles, clueless. I love those guys. I relate to them. They were clueless. He had told them what was going to happen. They were clueless. But he knows they're going to go through pain watching him die. So he says, guys, pay attention. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust in me. Okay. You ever have some of that happen, this kind of things happen, and people walk up to you and they wrap their arms around you and say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, and you're screaming inside going, no, it's not, no, it's not, no, it's not. So Jesus knew that wasn't enough. So he said this, in my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go prepare a place for you, I'm going to come back and take you to be with me where I am. I think those 12 guys sat up in shock. Those words had meaning. In their culture, family had a little girl who was 5 years old. This family in this village had a little boy that was 10 years old, 12 years old. They arranged a marriage. So when they get older, they were arranged this marriage. They grew up knowing who they're going to marry. And when he gets to be in his 20s and he's a journeyman and he can support himself and his family, he goes to her house and in front of his parents and her parents says this, in my Father's house is a room, and when that room is ready, I'm going to come and get you and take you to be with me where I am. That was the official words of betrothal. In fact, in the eyes of the law, they were married. They just weren't living together yet. And about a year later, they would have an idea that, there was no, wedding date. It was just about a year later, somewhere in that few weeks, the wedding would take place, or the rest of it would take place. And when he was ready, when he had everything ready and perfect for her, he gathered his family, walked to her village, gathered her and her family and the bridesmaids, they were all waiting, and walked back to his house for the wedding feast. See, the wedding was a betrothal. The wedding feast was when they celebrated, and then from that day on, they lived together as husband and wife. Now what do we get from that? Jesus knows. And after his death and resurrection, after his crucifixion, he knows we go through life and we go through death. He knows. He's been there. He's been there. And he opened the door so all of us that have go through that, get through that to the other side. He was the firstborn of the resurrection. Firstborn means there's many others. And he wants us to know, what this life is for you and I? This is the year of betrothal. Jesus has already come. He's already come to our house. He's already come to our house and said, I want you to know I love you. I love you with everything that I am. I love you with everything I've sacrificed leaving heaven to come here. I love you, and I'm going to give my life for you. And he did on the cross. And he says, I love you. And I'm going to get a place ready for you. And I'm going to come and get you. For all of us, all this life is betrothal. The church is called the bride of Christ. Our reunion with him is called the wedding feast of the Lamb. We see death a little differently because we're remembering and going through all of this stuff. For her, experience is different. How many of you remember the TV show Cheers? I loved that show when I was growing up. You know, I loved that show because everybody would come into the bar, and then this one guy would open the door and say, hi, and the whole bar would turn and go, what? Norm! And there came a time in the celebration of the wedding feast of the Lamb that is taking place in heaven right now. As people show up, the doors opened. Sherry stepped in. Jesus stood up. And the whole place turned. Sherry! Welcome home. This is the year of betrothal. Remember the good and the bad. It's all made you who you are. Find that which is good that you can honor. You know, the strongest people I have ever known have been the people who have been through the most. Because adversity is what God uses to make us strong. The Lord is with you today. Remember, share your memories. Honor her. And love each other. Because that's the thing that carries up. That's it. That's the thing. That's what God does. God is not looking upon us with judgment anymore, not since Jesus. God isn't angry with us anymore, not since Jesus. God looks at every one of us. He wants every one of us in his kingdom. He wants every one of us in his family. He wants every one of us to know, man, I love you. I want you to be in my family. But whether you're in his family or not isn't up to him. It's up to you. Remember and honor. And realize when you get there and the doors of heaven open and they call out your name, somebody standing there in that crowd is going to be Sherry. Glad to see you home at last. Father, we thank you for Sherry's life. We thank you, Father, for the impact she had on her children and all that they went through, the good and the bad. Father, that's life. That is the way life is. But in all of that, we saw today, love wins out. Love wins out. That's where you live in our lives, in the love. Bless us as we remember Sherry, as we honor her, as we share memories together. Bless us as we get ready to go back into life. We're going to pull out of this place, back into traffic, back into life. It's ups and downs. But help us to go back a little stronger, a little better, a little more faithful, and a little more loving because of today and because of Sherry. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, the family is glad you're here, and we're glad you're here too, and I appreciate your patience with our parking lot. So I know some of you had to park a little ways away, but they've prepared a little spread over here, give you some time to visit and talk and share. You're all invited to do that, okay? Because I've noticed in my life, when you can sit and talk together, that's when you really share around the table. So let's do that. And we're going to replay the slideshow so you can see all those things. Again, thank you all for coming.